This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fan Report. I'm Nick, and with me is Andrew.
Hey, what's up, guys?
We are bringing you this week episode number 160. Still trucking along there. It is a lot of episodes. We've been doing this for a while. And in all reality, we've been doing this even longer if you really want to count all the live show episodes. I mean, we did that for...
Well, if you want to count the live show, we've been doing this since 2017.
Has it been 5 years? It has been 5 years.
We started in February 2017, the live show.
Wow. Time flies. Obviously, we are in the dog days of the late spring in the offseason for both the teams we talked about, but things are beginning to ramp up a little bit. We've got the NBA draft just a couple of weeks away. I'm getting excited for it. I don't know about you.
I'm getting increasingly excited and increasingly nervous.
I was just about to say, I'm becoming more and more anxious as we get closer to the draft, because
there's so many possibilities, not just draft, it just moves in general with the Pistons that, like, I genuinely do not know what is going to happen over the next couple months here.
I don't either. Like, I'll say this, I don't think we're going to come out of this draft with another face of the franchise or a face of the city like we got with Cade. I mean, I wouldn't expect that out of a fifth pick over number one, but like, I was anxious going into last year's draft because I just didn't want us to make the wrong decision. But it was like a different kind of anxious. Like, it was excitement because I know we have the chance to get Cade. I was just anxious because I don't want us to pass up on him, versus this time I'm anxious because there are so many ways we could get this pick wrong. And there are so many ways, but, you know, I don't want to be pessimistic. There's also a lot of ways that we could probably get this pick right. I'm just curious as to what the guy we take is going to be on this team and what he's going to be in this league, because we're not really just kind of locked into one or two guys here. We're not even locked into, one or two positions. I mean, we could be looking at a pretty much any position here outside of a ball handling one or distributing one. That's really the only role on an offense that we're not looking at here. Because we're looking at two guards, we're looking at threes and fours on the wing, we're looking at fives if if one falls to us, or if we end up going in further into the top 10 here. Like, there's so many options that the Pistons can go with here that because of it, I have no idea what we're doing. And I feel like that is making me even more anxious, because that just opens the door to something that we as Detroit sports fans have become so familiar with, and that is the draft bust.
Yep. And it's interesting because it's been like the same four names float around for the Pistons at the 5 spot, but up until now there was only one name that was ever reported that the Pistons actually loved, and that was James Edwards reporting on Keegan Murray, that the Pistons loved Keegan Murray.
Right. Which was probably the guy that's lowest on our ranking.
Now we get another name, an Eastern Conference exec who spoke to David Aldridge, said that Detroit loves Jaden Ivey.
I like that a lot better.
Couldn't have two more different prospects between Keegan Murray and Jaden Ivey. They are polar opposites in terms of players.
Right. They don't play anywhere near the same role. They don't play the same position. They're not the same type, size, anything. Like
style, not the same style, nothing.
Right. Like, Keegan Murray plays much more of a role like what we saw with Tobias Harris in that regard, with the tweener type player that plays in the wing. And Jaden Ivey is much more of a ball dominant scorer. And granted, he can play off ball as well. He just wasn't asked to as much at Purdue, but we know it's there.
Not to mention, Jaden Ivey just turned 20, and Keegan Murray will be 22 by the time the season starts. So you also have a pretty decent age difference there.
Do you think that plays a factor in this decision? Because, and the reason I say that is because you look at how things have worked out with Saddiq Bey. Yeah. With him being an older prospect and a little bit more mature and developed in his game, to be able to essentially help right away. Do you think that plays a factor in their decision here? That
I don't
after
think it
a guy
ever,
like Keegan Murray because he's probably a little bit more NBA ready to be a solid contributor in the game today versus Jaden Ivey may take a year or two.
Like, no, I don't think it should ever play a factor, unless you have an insane age gap between two players that you are completely torn between and are very similar prospects, and you're like, I am happy with either one. I'll take the younger one. Like,
the only time I say it should play a factor is if you're a team that just needs to add one more guy to be championship competitive. Like, you're already a good playoff team. You just need that one guy that can contribute right away. Then you go after the NBA ready guy, probably. You'd probably lean that way because it's more of a buy now, win now move versus taking the project that could take you 4 or 5 years, which by that time your window may be done. So and the Pistons just aren't there. You know, I'm okay with taking on a guy that.
But I wouldn't consider either of these guys a project, like Keegan Murray and Jaden Ivey.
No, I wouldn't either. Absolutely not.
Probably needs a little more seasoning than Keegan Murray does, but
and maturing of his game, absolutely. But I'd be willing to take on a guy who, this time in the Pistons building, I'd be willing to take on a guy that may take a year or two to get there. I just don't want to keep doing that, and I know like that kind of leads to what I was saying last week, where I don't want to keep doing that with draft prospects. I want to eventually. I don't want to keep building draft capital to keep pushing things down. I want to get the guys that in the draft that I can, build into something within a couple of years. But I also want to add ready to contribute pieces around that, so that we can start winning some ball games beginning this year, next year, and the year after. So.
And following along the lines like that, it's part of the reason why, for me, Jaden Ivey, in my opinion, is starting to separate himself a little bit from Shane Sharp. Like, for example, I saw he did the film room with Mike Schmitz that a lot of prospects do, and I thought he sounded very intelligent in that film room in terms of how he processes the game.
Well, Purdue's a good school. Good Big Ten school.
But like, I was very afraid just from his play style that he was going to, I mean, obviously he's going to try to hide it, but that I'd be able to like pick through and be like, no, I'm really sensing a lot of me first mentality. Now there were some instances where
there's a lot of outside sources around, fans and other media outlets around the league from other towns that kind of think the same about Cade, that he's a me first guy. He's selfish with the ball. And here in Detroit, I'm like, I've never once heard that. I've never once thought that. Like, I think he's the most selfless guy out there. Sure. Does he take some bad shots? Yeah, but he's asked to because, well, he's the only guy that can legitimately score on this team.
Yep. And it, like, even from looking at his film room discussion, like, there were some instances where it sounded like when he's like breaking down a play that like it sounded like he was looking for his own shot before looking at his teammates. Part of that is, the assistant player at Purdue. It's not like he had a bunch of playmakers that he could look for to start. But also when you're the 2 guard on the team, I'm not expecting you to look playmaker first. You're the guy that's going to get dumped off to go get a bucket. So
is it just weird? Does Purdue always end up with just one crazy good guard and then or crazy good player? I'll say that.
We had the last one on our team. We have the last one on our team in Carson Edwards.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like they always have just one crazy good player, and then everybody else is just meh.
But and then in terms of Shane Sharp, like the longer we go without hearing anything or seeing anything, the more skeptical I'm getting. Like, there was a report. There was a report that was put out by this publication, KSR. I'm not familiar with them, but I did find some of the stuff in there compelling. One in particular, there's anonymous scout told the head of NBA Big Board. He's like the head scout for NBA Big Board. Anonymous scout told this guy, saying he barely practiced at Kentucky, didn't want to play in games. He doesn't want to play at the combine. Who's advising him? He can't hide forever. Does he want to play in summer league? I don't know. Like, it's kind of a good point. Like, it's starting to feel to me that he's hiding something. Like,
100% agree. And that's kind of what I have alluded to a little bit. Like, we don't know if this guy is actually any good at basketball because you look at the competition he went up against. He played Canadian high school ball. No disrespect to Canadian high school basketball, but it's not that high of a tier of game.
Yep.
It's just not. And I have a lot of respect for Shaden Sharp's game, and I do think he's got a lot of potential there, but the fact that he has an outright refusal to showcase it regularly, I don't want to say it all because I know he has, but to showcase it regularly against tougher competition. And I know he's practicing at Kentucky. How much? That I don't know. I think that saying he hasn't practiced much at Kentucky may be a little bit of an exaggeration, and maybe a little bit of a smokescreen from a team coming in saying, to try to stop him from being picked inside that top 3. Maybe it's a team at 4 or 5 or 6. I don't know. But I don't know that I don't know what to think about this guy because he hasn't shown a willingness to really regularly showcase his game. And even if he was willing to practice all the time at Kentucky, that's not really a great place to showcase it either.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he did do a workout, which the Athletics, John Holliday and Sam Vecini both attended, or at least had sources that attended and informed them. But they reported out on the workout, and they said a lot of what came through sources was that absolutely nothing was done in the workout at game speed, with most of the drills in terms of his handle being executed more slowly than what we'll see a face on an NBA court. He didn't do anything complex for a player who few have actually seen at high level game speed much. The workout didn't provide any insight into the actual questions to which decision makers would like some semblance of an answer before potentially selecting him on draft night. It's a prime example of why these pro days can be so frustrating.
You know what this is beginning to sound like to me? And this is straight up disrespectful to Shaedon Sharpe and his camp. This sounds a hell of a lot like Darko pre-draft.
Really?
Yes.
I have a different idea of what's happening, but
it sounds a hell of a lot like Darko pre-draft because you look at think back to pre-draft Darko. It was a lot of workout videos that were not game speed. It was a lot of videos of him backing down a chair but wouldn't go into his scrimmage. It was a lot of stuff like that where he wasn't really doing anything, but he looked really good doing the half speed backing down of a chair type of stuff. And that sounds to me exactly what Shaedon Sharpe is doing. Half speed, not really giving it all, not going up against somebody, really trying on defense, not doing it in a game environment. It's just workouts. And that sounds a lot like Darko pre-draft. And again, that's straight up disrespect to Shaedon Sharpe, but I see some parallels there.
No, I think you're right because it's really one or two things, and the first one is what you hit on. Like, is he trying to ride that pure? Like, is it a situation of where he knows that potential has now overhyped him, and he's trying to ride that to a draft pick, knowing if he does try to play in a scrimmage or something, he has a pretty good feeling that his showing in that scrimmage would lower his draft stock? It's either that, or he's purposely taking his draft stock to try to go to a better team, which then makes me question his character. So either way, it's not looking good.
I mean, in today's day and age, like it's more like if you are a guy, and this is true even in the NFL draft, if you're a guy who's already a top-rated prospect, like you're in that top 3, top 4, a lot of your camp will tell you, stop. You don't need to showcase anything else. You don't want to risk injury. You don't want to risk doing anything that can cause you to fall. If you're a guy
like Jabari Smith or Paolo Banchero.
You don't want to do anything that can cause you to fall in your draft. I mean, the same has been true with a lot of NFL prospects where they either take the year off or whatever.
Yeah, and like Cade only worked out for the Pistons. Like,
exactly.
He didn't need to work out for anybody else.
It's almost like a situation where they feel that the less they showcase, the better for them because they won't show any weaknesses. They won't risk anything. They already know that they're at the top, so let's not, take a chance to have that get doubted. So, I mean, I get that to an extent, but when there is nothing to go off of already, and that's quite literally what we have here is a situation where we have nothing to go off of with Shaedon Sharpe, you got to at least prove something at some point.
Because he's a guy that can go top 3 if he were to prove some stuff right about him through this pre-draft process. If you were to do a scrimmage of draft prospects and at least play well, if not dominate,
right?
Or if he were to go through some actual high-level workouts, he would. There's a chance he could go top 3 in that scenario.
Right. And
what's going to cause him to go 5 or later is people being scared because of how much of a mystery he is.
Absolutely. And the difference between the guys who take a year off after, a really good year, like a quarterback who takes a year off in college to go into the draft or start working into the draft, or a defensive end, or an edge rusher that does that, or in the case of like Cade Cunningham, a guy who only works out for one team. Like the difference between that and what we have here with Shaedon Sharpe is we had a year of college football to go off of with that quarterback. We had a year of play to go off of with the pass rusher. We had a full season of Cade. Like, we had something to realistically look at and say, okay, this is this guy's abilities against this competition.
Do you think he might have gotten a draft promise?
No.
Maybe the Kings at 4, and that's why he's like...
Well, maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't know if he necessarily got a draft promise or if he's been told so much by so many different people that, hey, you are going in the top 5 here. You are going in the top 4 or top 3. There's nothing else you need to prove. That's what he's listening to. Like, I don't know if it's he got a draft promise or if it's that, but it's in my mind, it's got to be one of those two, because why else would he be doing this? And don't get me wrong, I like Shaden Sharp as a prospect. He's a dream scenario prospect. But the fact that I have nothing to go off of here kind of scares me a little bit.
I was excited about it going into the pre-draft process because I'm like, all right, this is a guy who didn't play in college, but, you know, we're going to get a workout film and stuff. Like, he's probably going to participate in the combine because he doesn't have any college tape. Like,
and that just goes to show you how,
now that we're done with all that and we still have nothing, I'm like, okay, what the hell?
And that just goes to show you how wild the whole pre-draft process is for the NBA and really not even just the NBA, but sports in general. Like, you hear reports about him going top 3 for like a month, that he's definitely inside that top 3. Somebody else is dropping out. He's in there. And now you hear reports that there's teams that are kind of skeptical on him because he won't do anything. Like, there's such a Jekyll and Hyde to the pre-draft process with all of these prospects that it's like, and that just lends even more to how like anxious I'm becoming as a Pistons fan. Like, can I even believe anything that comes out of these reports anymore? Because it's going to change in a week. Like, the Pistons, for example, how the Pistons were enamored with Keegan Murray this year, or now they're enamored with Jaden Ivey. I've heard that before. I've heard that about guys like Donavon Mitchell when the Pistons were supposedly enamored with Donavon Mitchell. I heard that about Devin Booker when the Pistons were supposedly enamored with Devin Booker. Like, we've heard this before.
Yeah.
And look what happened. So I would love to see the Pistons go and get Jaden Ivey or be aggressive and move up even if they want to, or trade Jeremy Grant and get the Blazers pick. Like, I would love that. But until I see it actually happen, I don't know, man. Like, it's tough for me to believe any of it. And don't get me wrong. Like, hearing the report that the Pistons are in love with Jaden Ivey, that makes me happy. I want that to be true. I really do, because I want the Pistons to get a guy like Jaden Ivey. He right now is, of the guys I expect to see there at number 5, he's my top prospect.
I mean, I agree with you. It, like I said, Jaden Ivey is kind of, he's begun to separate himself from Shaden Sharp for me. And I personally love the fit alongside Cade.
Like, I do too. I know the kind of guy we need. Marks there and question marks with his game, but I think the fit is real. I think it's definitely real, and I think Cade would be extremely excited to get to have the opportunity to play alongside Jaden Ivey and vice versa.
Yeah,
your backcourt could become elite at that point.
But speaking of Donavon Mitchell, so with Quinn Snyder departing from the Utah Jazz, there's been a lot of reports swirling around that Donavon Mitchell is, quote unquote, unsettled, unnerved, question the future, you know, the normal terms you get when something like this happens. But with that, there's been a lot of trade rumors flying and a lot of people wanting the Pistons to trade for Donavon Mitchell. But reports are that if the Jazz were to trade Donavon Mitchell, they'd be looking for like a king's ransom price on him, which, I mean, fair enough.
Yeah, he is a star.
My question to you is there anyone that's off limits Cade in a trade for Donavon Mitchell? That's it. Is it just Cade?
It's just Cade. Next closest would be Sadiq, but he's not off limits in my mind.
So if Sadiq and a 5th were involved in a trade package for Donavon Mitchell,
and a 5th,
in our fifth pick.
Okay,
yeah. If that was involved in a trade package for Donavon Mitchell, I'm assuming they'd probably want a future first on top of that. But
whoa, man, that's tough, man. I'm not gonna lie to you because he's still young. That's the thing. Like,
yeah,
he's only what, 2 years older than Sadiq Bey.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we drafted him 2017.
He's 25. Or not we, he's not even 2 years older than Sadiq Bey. Yeah. Okay, he's 2 years older. All right. Less than technically, but that's tough, man. I really like Sadiq Bey a lot, and I think what he brings to this team is incredibly important, but the chance to get Donavon Mitchell is so nice. Like my only concerns here's where
you're sitting there number 5 on draft day. The Jazz are all, and Jay Ivy's on the board. The Jazz are offering you Donavon Mitchell for we'll say Sadiq number 5, a future first.
Can I switch out Sadiq with Jeremy Grant?
I would love to.
Like you,
in all honesty,
it'd
probably be both Sadiq and Jeremy.
It's probably
what the Jazz
be.
would demand.
But you mean it actually maybe not, considering they didn't really play well together. The Jazz may not want that situation. But you tell me right now that the Pistons have a chance to trade 5, Jeremy Grant, and a future first to bring in Donavon Mitchell. I'd probably do that. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll even throw in Killian Hayes or someone. Like I'd do that all day. But to attach Sadiq Bey to it and a future first and probably Killian Hayes too, I don't know, man.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but so is Donavon Mitchell.
It's Donavon Mitchell.
Don't get me wrong. There are things regarding a fit that would scare me a little bit with Donavon Mitchell alongside Cade, because Donavon Mitchell doesn't necessarily play that well with some other guys out there. I mean, obviously it's tough to play well offensively with Rudy Gobert, because Rudy Gobert doesn't know how to play offense, but he is very ball dominant. There's one.
Yep.
He needs the ball in his hands to truly be his best self. That's 2. Like there are some fit concerns there with Cade. But when it comes to guys like Cade Cunningham and Donavon Mitchell, you just find ways to make it work.
Yeah,
is my point here.
It's.
Would you do it?
Basically, the question for me is going to be like, if you're sitting there at 5, I mean,
Jaden Ivey's staring you in the face.
Jaden Ivey's staring in your face. You hope his ceiling is going to be like a Donavon Mitchell type,
right?
But then like. Not only are you you're gambling on, okay, I'm going to get what I wanted out of Jaden Ivey in Donavon Mitchell so I don't have to draft Ivey, but are you willing to part with Sadiq Bey to not have to make the gamble on Ivey? That's the question.
Flipping that around, though, and playing devil's advocate here, you're gambling on Jaden Ivey becoming Donavon Mitchell, 1, and you're gambling on Sadiq Bey progressing. Like, Sadiq Bey right here, right now, is a solid basketball player, wildly inconsistent, but solid. But is he a contributor on a championship team? That's a question mark. Right here, right now, if Sadiq Bey never got better than he is right now, how much of a contributor is he on a really good basketball team? And there's a lot to wonder there, you know? Yeah. Like, defensively, I think there's no question, but offensively, I think the inconsistency probably scares somebody away.
Yeah, right now on a playoff/championship contending basketball team, he is going to be like your standard 3 and D piece, probably off the bench,
probably off the bench, exactly,
depending on what their wing rotation looks like. But
right.
But what you're hoping is you have another Michael Bridges on your hands, like
a Michael Bridges, Robert Covington, like somebody who
those guys start on championship contending teams.
But that's what you hope he turns into.
Yeah.
So. I don't know, man. Like it's tough to say because you're gambling on either side. You have less of a gamble, I guess, by bringing in Donavon Mitchell because you know what you're getting there. It's the conversation of 1 in the hand's better than 2 in the bush. But like at the same time, I feel pretty confident in Sadiq Bey. I don't think it's that much of a gamble. Jaden Ivey is where the real gamble is.
So. BasketballNews.com put out 3 different draft trade scenarios for Donavon Mitchell for the Pistons. Okay. I'm going to disregard 2 of them because we're not giving up nearly enough. Like the first one is Jeremy Grant and Kelly Olynyk. I mean, if they did that, I'd be running naked in the street. But
dude, that's helicopter dance type area there. But, like that's nuts. No way.
So
there's no chance they would take that.
And then the other
one would have to like hold the GM of the Jazz hostage to get out of Utah for that to happen.
And then the other one is Donavon Mitchell for Jeremy Grant, Killian Hayes, and Hamidou, which I would also jump at immediately.
Easy. All day. That's another one he'd have to hold the GM hostage to do.
Yeah, so here's the most aggressive one. So we're getting Donavon Mitchell and Royce O'Neal in this deal.
Okay. I kind of like Royce O'Neal.
Yeah. We trade away Jeremy, Killian, Hamidou, Kelly, and then something like 3 first-rounders and potentially multiple swaps.
3 first-rounders and multiple swaps. Okay. I'll be honest with you. None of those names that were mentioned really
hurt.
No. Yeah, hurt. They don't hurt.
Because I want to trade Grant. Killian Hayes, I'm admitting, is a project that we're working on that may or may not pan out. So, like,
and not only may or may not pan out, but like at this point, I am expecting him to, like, if he pans out, it's an off the bench point guard that's a defensive specialist, but can still move the ball and not be a liability offensively. Like, that's what I hope Killian Hayes becomes at this point.
Yeah, like, I'm acknowledging that most of our perceived value in Killian Hayes is hope / potential.
Yes. And Kelly Olynyk, I really don't care. Hamidou Diallo, you know,
I'll move him if he gets me Donavon Mitchell.
But yeah, I'd move him. 3 first-round picks.
That's
what first-round picks are we talking?
It didn't say. It just said the Pistons are moving. Like, in order to get this done, the Pistons will be moving something like 3 first-rounders in a deal and potentially multiple first-round pick swaps.
Because I'll tell you right now, you give me a team of Cade, Mitchell,
Mitchell backcourt is beautiful.
Sadiq, and you still have some money to probably sign somebody.
And
in the
you still have your number 5 pick.
If you, I'm expecting 5 to be moved in this deal, and you still got money to bring in somebody like, I don't know, Ayton or something. You know, a big man. A lot of those future first round picks aren't going to be very good.
So
like, they're going to be in the 20s.
Are you willing to completely call the rebuild over, basically, on this trade? Just, all right, let's bring in some free agents and go for it.
You know what? For the sake of consistency, doing it. I've been fighting for this team to start winning some games for weeks now, and this would give me that. This would give me that dream. Now you would have to spend some money in the offseason to put bodies on your bench because you are basically trading away your entire bench.
Yeah.
I'd do it.
Yeah, Killian, Hami, and Kelly. That's a big part of your bench rotation right there.
You're basically going all in on a build of Cade, Sadiq, and Donavon Mitchell with some money in free agency. And honestly, I can live with that.
And
I can live with that.
Yeah, and I'd obviously need some sort of guarantee or reassurance that Donovan. He still has a lot of time left on this deal. I was going to say that he stays in Detroit.
I was going to say I thought he had 3 years left.
He's signed through 2026.
Yeah.
So never mind.
So you're going to get at least 3 years of a shot to make this happen.
Yeah.
And honestly, yeah, I'd do it. Because frankly, if this team pans out the way I expected to, those draft picks are going to be in the late 20s, mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
And potentially 30. And I think this team would start winning some damn basketball games, and that's what I want. It would be a ballsy move, and
can the pick swaps be our swap? Can we make the decision on the pick swap?
No.
We give them 3 first round picks. Can they give us this pick swaps?
No. I would probably say, yeah, I'd do it. I don't need the pick swaps. Honestly, I don't care. I'll trade you my next 4 first-round picks if it means I can guarantee a championship in this town in the next 5 years.
Well, that's the thing. If we can guarantee a championship, yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Well, I'm giving you an extra first.
No guarantee.
I'm giving you an extra first to guarantee that championship. I'd give you 5.
But yeah, if those first-round picks don't involve number 5 overall, I'm especially jumping on this one.
I would guarantee you it would.
Yeah.
Even if it does, I'm jumping on it. I want to see some winning basketball games in this town. So I'm in. It's aggressive, but I like to be aggressive.
Should we talk about some prospects?
Let's do it.
We've basically covered the main prospects that the Pistons would be looking at.
Right.
But on the off chance that one of the bigs in this draft falls beyond number 4, or maybe even beyond number 3, we trade with the Kings up to 4.
I would give it like a 30% chance a big drops to us.
At 5?
At 5.
Oh, wow.
Because there are a lot of teams that may be in love with Shaedon Sharpe, and Jaden Ivey's at some point in time been the number 1 prospect. There's a lot of teams that would love to have a Jaden Ivey on their team. So maybe there's a situation where both Shaedon Sharpe and Jaden Ivey go inside the top 4. And if that happens, one of the bigs drops. So
you're basically betting on the only other person I even heard go in the top 4 was Keegan Murray. It's the only other person,
Right.
and specifically 4. So
right, and I don't think that's going to happen. So I think the chances, like I said, I don't think it's likely, but I'd give it about a 30% chance it happens.
I hope that happens.
I mean, I'd be a little bit disappointed we missed out on Jaden Ivey.
No, I said if Keegan Murray goes 4, I'm saying.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
If you tell me Shaedon Sharpe and Keegan Murray went inside the top 4, I'd be ecstatic. You mean I have my pick of Jaden Ivey in one of these 3?
So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go through these next 3 names as if Shaedon Sharpe and Keegan Murray are off the board and someone has slipped.
Let's say... Oh,
and you're basically deciding between...
It makes it a little more interesting if Jaden Ivey's still available. I like it.
So you're basically deciding between Jaden Ivey and one of these names.
I like it. All right, let's do it. Who do you want to start with?
Let's start with Chet. I think Chet's fun to talk about.
All right. The consensus number 1 or number 2 overall pick. The only 2 guys I don't expect to drop to us here.
Yep.
Don't think have a flying chance. Chet Holmgren, 7 feet tall, 195 pounds, handles the ball like a point guard.
Wait, that's it? I thought it was like 260.
No. Handles the ball like a point guard, can shoot the ball well from anywhere on the floor almost, but he is very much a project. There's a lot of rawness there. Played in a what the hell conference is Gonzaga in? I can't remember. But a lowly conference out west in college basketball. Dominated said conference, except for games that he played against legitimate top tier Power 5 D1 schools. He tend to not show up in those games or be, I don't want to say middling, but be mediocre. Games against, I want to say, like Duke, UCLA, he was just meh. Didn't really jump off the page. He is probably the most exciting prospect in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's got all the raw skills and tools that you would want out of a 7. Like you could possibly. He's 7'1"
with a 7'6" wingspan. Like that's freakish.
The guy projects to be an elite shot blocker. He's got range out to the 3-point line. He's a very good rebounder. But like you said,
he's
all
also
of these,
like pretty damn athletic for a 7-footer.
Yeah, all of these tools are things that all need refining.
Absolutely.
And on top of that, he's going to need to add quite a bit of weight.
He needs to add about 40 pounds at least.
I did see an interesting Reddit post on Chet Holmgren though, saying like, "What if we're thinking about Chet all wrong?" And basically, the person on Reddit was saying that like we're all thinking about Chet as like a skinny big, but what if he's just a tall wing? And I'm like, that's like someone who just smokes some weed and went on Reddit. But like,
this guy is living in a video game. He's living in NBA 2K.
But what I do want to take from that is the fact that like I think part of the reason that you'll see a team wanting to take him number 1 is because of the fact that they could keep him on the outside until he builds some mess. Like
they could play him
they could play him as almost like an exclusive stretch 4.
Right.
For a while. Like,
you know, I've been
and
seeing
just be a
lately,
help side defender in the post.
I've been seeing a comparison that I don't know why it hasn't really dawned on me until kind of recently, but he's been getting a lot of comparisons to, offensively speaking, Dirk Nowitzki.
Okay.
And I can see that because you talk about the shooting, you talk about the jump shot, and the fact that he kind of relies on that a little bit in his game because he doesn't really have the body to pound inside. And Dirk was kind of that guy. Dirk had a little bit more of a back it down and then do that vintage, turnaround J on the baseline that Dirk Nowitzki made absolutely famous. But I can kind of see a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And Dirk Nowitzki was a 7-foot tall guy that pretty much played outside in. Chet Holmgren could be that. He could be a guy that can be a 7-footer that can play outside in. He can also handle the ball and distribute a little bit. Like, I like the idea of what Chet Holmgren can be. I love the idea of what Chet Holmgren can become. It's just there are a lot of question marks in the realm of can he add some strength? Can he add some size? Because, frankly, at 195 pounds, I don't think you're doing shit inside the arc in the NBA. Not at 7 feet tall.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
But there are some questions about his shooting also. They say he is an elite shooter. They project him to be. But he shot 71% from the line. That's not elite. Mm-hmm. He shot 39% from beyond the arc, which is good. I don't know that I consider that elite, but it's good. Yeah, shooting 71% from the line does concern me a little bit for a guy who's supposed to be an elite shooter.
Yeah, you start because again, we've said it time and time again. Free throw percentage is a pretty good indicator of how someone can project out as a shooter. Mm-hmm. So you start to wonder if that 3-point percentage was fluky in any way.
Not playing against elite tier perimeter defenses in whatever conference Gonzaga's in. I can't remember.
I couldn't tell you. I'm really bad with WCC.
West Coast Conference. I knew it was something West, but the toughest team they played in the West Coast Conference was St. Mary's, which, don't get me wrong, St. Mary's is a good team. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, it was a bunch of, group of 5 schools. Like, it's not a top-notch conference. And I do want to pull up here, because I've brought this up to you in the past, and it's Chet Holmgren's game log, and I zeroed in, I think it was like 10 games, where he played a legitimate, really good opponent. One of those was St. Mary's, in the tournament where he put up 8 points, 8 rebounds, had 4 fouls. He was in foul trouble, which is something that is a concern with Chet Holmgren because of his size. He's not able to... Yes, he can be an elite shot blocker, but can he really, if he's constantly getting bodied and pushed out of position? If you're out of position,
that's why I said at his current weight, I would have him as a stretch four and a help side defender in the post.
Right.
Come in, make a block if someone's getting completely bodied down low, but you're not the one actually taking the brunt of the contact.
But you look at some of these other games against top-notch teams. Memphis, 9 points, 9 rebounds, 5 fouls. Arkansas, 11 points, 14 rebounds is great, 5 fouls. And 2 blocks in that game. He did have 4 blocks against Memphis. He had 7 blocks against Georgia State, which, again, Georgia State, not a big-time school. San Francisco, 17 points, 8 boards, 6 blocks. San Francisco's not a big-time school.
Yeah.
Another game against St. Mary's, 6 points, 6 boards, 5 fouls. Going down, another game against St. Mary's, 11 points, 13 boards is good, and he stayed out of foul trouble in that one. That was probably his best game against St. Mary's this year. Going up against, trying to find some really good teams here. Texas Tech, 5 points, 11 boards, 4 fouls. Alabama, 10 points, 11 boards. He stayed out of foul trouble in that one. Duke, 16-7, 3 fouls. I believe he had 3 blocks in this game as well. This was probably, in my mind, one of the more impressive games he had to put up 16 points.
All these games you're naming.
61.5%, by the way.
All these games you're naming, he didn't shoot well from behind the line, though. 0 for 4 against Alabama, 0 for 3 against Duke.
He also did not take a 3 against Duke either, I don't. No, he shot 0 for 3 from 3. Yeah. He didn't take a free throw against Duke.
Yeah. If you look at his conference tournament, for example, he shot 12.5% from behind the line. If you look at the March Madness tournament, he shot 12.5% from behind the line.
Earlier in the season against Texas, granted, he only played 23 minutes, 2 points, 5 boards, 4 fouls. Like this is where I'm saying, like,
you bring up a good point that you're seeing a pattern in terms of
when he plays real competition, he's not very good, and he's going to play nothing but good competition in the NBA, and that's what really concerns me here. Is obviously his size is UCLA is another decent game, 15 points, 6 boards, only 3 fouls. But you look at these games where, he's played some good basketball against not so great teams, but you put him in the NBA, obviously his size is a concern because he's not being able to stay in position, and he kind of disappears a little bit. Yeah. And that is something that you just can't have out of a guy you're taking inside the top 5. You put him against good competition, he can't falter.
If Chet somehow falls to the top to number 5, is the possibility of what he can be as a true unicorn in this league enough for you to pass on Jay Ivey?
I mean, I think it's got to be. You look at the comparisons he draws that actually make a lot of sense for him. Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, who wouldn't love to have a what Kristaps was supposed to be on your team? And honestly, I think Holmgren probably projects to be a better shooter, a better shooting Porzingis. I would love that. That's amazing.
I agree.
And then there's the fact that you look at some of these other comparisons. I see Dirk on offense, Marcus Camby on defense. I would love that. That's awesome. there's so much that you look at with Chet Holmgren, and it's tough to compare a guy like this, and it's tough to really project a guy like this because we have nothing to go off of. We're taking pieces out of different players and saying, okay, this is what he could become. But it's really raw, and he is a project. He is a guy who's, we also got to wonder, is he going to be able to move as well if he adds 30, 40 pounds? Is he going to be able to shoot as well if he adds 30, 40 pounds? Handle the ball as well? Is he going to be as athletic? Is he going to be as quick? Like, those are legitimate concerns. When you add that much body weight to a guy who's not used to playing with that's a concern.
I agree. But I also agree that if he's there at 5, I think I'd have to pull the trigger because at the very least, he's going to be a very effective stretch 4. And
you would hope. Yeah.
And at best, you're talking like he could turn into one of the best players in the league. So.
Right. Like the potential that's there is just too great to pass up in my mind. Like I just sat here and threw a bunch of question marks about him, but there's not a single guy in this draft that doesn't have question marks, and Jaden Ivey is included in that.
Yep.
Chet Holmgren's potential, though, is higher than anybody else's. And he fills a need right away.
Yep.
And what he could become fills an even bigger need. And also, could you imagine the pick and roll with a Chet Holmgren and Cade Cunningham if Chet Holmgren actually becomes what we think? Like, that is terrifying for defenses. You mean to tell me there's a 230-pound guy who can do everything with the basketball that's going to come up and is athletic and can come up and set a pick, and he's either going to fade for a pick and pop or roll to the basket and dunk on you like that? That's stop that. You can't stop that.
Or you gotta figure out how you're going to stop the 6'6", 220-pound point guard.
That's probably one of the best post-up guards in the NBA right here, right now. Good luck. Yeah. That offense right there that's elite. You can't stop that. And plus, you got a ton of money to spend on a 2 guard to come in and that can shoot from the outside and score. Like, and you've got Sadiq Bey. Like, it's just not fair.
All right, I think we're both in agreement. Moving on to Jabari Smith, another big, lengthy shooter.
The other guy who's projected to go top 1 or 2.
Yeah, every team can use this kind of guy. I mean, nearly 7 foot tall.
His shooting is what you hope Chet Holmgren becomes.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
7 feet tall, or he's 6'10", 220 pounds. You hope Chet Holmgren can become that.
Exactly. And on the defensive end, he's a pretty damn good defender. I do still wish I could have seen more in terms of like rim protection, defense in the paint. But in terms of just taking guys in the perimeter and just normal staying in front of your man and being a pest and being aggressive, he can do it.
Honestly, if he can do that in the NBA, I can't ask much more out of him.
Exactly.
Defensively speaking, like that's what you want guys to do. Just play solid defense. If you have 5 guys that play solid defense, you're gonna win most nights.
But the two biggest question marks that I would put on Jabari Smith are, again, one, how well can he operate in the post if asked to do so, both defensively and offensively, but mainly defensively is what because I think the offense is a moot point here. He's going to stay around the 3-point line.
I was going to say, offensively is a big question mark. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, is it ever going to be a problem?
Yeah. But like defensively, he might not be able to control it as well because guys can take him into the paint. And then 2, we know he can shoot. We know that. But what else
he
is
shot 42% from 3.
But in terms of providing anything else, like he's not much of a shot creator. He's a very straight line driver, and actually he doesn't really find his teammates that well. It's very much just he's a knockdown shooter who's tall as hell.
He's a bit of a ball stopper in that regard too, because of the fact that he's not able to really find his teammates as well. He's got a lot of quickness and athleticism to mix with that great size, but he is a guy that pretty much, if he does take you off the bounce, he's going straight to the hole, and you can betcha he's going to put it up himself. Like, he's not going to be looking for that extra pass or that kick out to the outlet to hit a corner 3. Like, he's going to the hoop. Now, that is something I do think that it can be developed in the NBA. I truly believe that. Finding that guy on the perimeter is something you can learn. How much do you, like, in terms of what he does on the floor, not the player type, not the skill repertoire. How much do you compare what he does to what, or would do for the Pistons to what Jeremy Grant does now? A guy who's a ball stopper, can shoot the three, takes you off the bounce. I think Jabari Smith would do everything better, except play defense.
Except take you off the bounce. He's not really
that too. But they would both be ball stoppers in that regard. Don't really find that outlet pass when they take you off the bounce.
Yeah, I never really try to draw that comparison because, yeah, you're right. They are two very different players. But in terms of the impact they'll have on the floor, yeah, in that regard, he's probably going to be even more of a ball stopper than Jeremy Grant was. But he's also going to be more of a mismatch than Jeremy Grant was with the ball in his hands.
With the size that he's got and the athleticism.
Like one of the funniest comparisons I saw for Jabari Smith was Kevin Durant without the handles. And I'm like, well, that's not really Kevin Durant at all then.
No. The comparisons I see the most are like a better Rashard Lewis, Chris Bosh.
I like the Rashard Lewis comparison a lot.
A little bit better of Rashard Lewis. Chris Bosh I see a lot. And I also have seen a little bit of Kevin Garnett thrown in there too, which I can't go wrong there. Kevin Garnett's game was just so refined. So if you can get Jabari Smith to refine his game to where he can become Kevin Garnett, that's a dream.
Yeah.
But I see the Rashard Lewis a lot. I think he's better than Rashard Lewis or can become better than Rashard Lewis, but I can see it for sure.
Yeah, what's interesting about the three guys you're talking about is really depending on what draft board you look, someone's going to have them ranked number one. Like all three of these guys that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
But Jabari Smith, is there enough there for you to take him above?
Yes.
J9?
There's no question in my mind there. Like, I know it. Let me preface this by saying there's no doubt in my mind I would take Chet Holmgren over Jaden Ivey. There's also no doubt in my mind I would take Jabari Smith over Jaden Ivey. Like, there is a clear pecking order there. Now, if the craziness happens where, let's say, Shaden Sharp goes 1, Jaden Ivey goes 2, Keegan Murray 3, and Paolo Banchero 4, and you have Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren staring at the face at 5, I would be selling my soul. I'd be selling my soul to also get the 6th pick.
Can I have both, please? You can imagine that front court, though.
Oh,
Jesus.
my God.
You got no post defense, but imagine that front court.
Jabari Smith, I would absolutely take over Jaden Ivey. I think the potential that's there with the already their ability is just too great to pass up. He fills a need. Like, you can't pass up on a guy like Jabari Smith. He is the consensus number 1 pick for a reason and has been for a long time. Yes, Chet Holmgren's been thrown in. I know I've seen Jaden Ivey there. Paolo Banchero was there for about a 15 minutes of fame type of deal, but
I'm still seeing Paolo Banchero there too in certain draft boards.
Jabari Smith is the most commonly seen number 1 pick for a reason. And honestly, if I had to take one, like pick between the three of who was the least likely to drop to the Pistons at 5, it's him. I think you have like a 0.05% chance that he drops to the Pistons at 5.
I agree. He's definitely least likely to 3 in my opinion. Yes. All right, third guy and final guy that we're going to talk about, Paolo Banchero, Duke forward. Possibly the best shot creator in this draft.
Possibly also had the best tournament of the 3. I don't even say possibly. He had the best tournament of the 3.
Basically anything you want on the offensive end, he can pretty much do. Basically nothing you want on the defensive end, he can do.
See, thing is, though, is it's not that he can't. It's that I don't know that he's been trying.
Yeah, I feel like we said,
because like he's got solid size, he's got good athleticism. Like he's not super athletic, but it's there. Like he's got an ability to move. He's not doesn't just stand there. So I think it's more of an effort thing with Paolo Banchero. Like he does a lot of things well on the floor. I don't know that there's anything he does truly great though.
I think I can agree with you because his biggest calling card, if you ask me, is just his scoring versatility.
Correction. But I think he's a really great facilitator from his position.
Sure.
I'll give him that.
For his position.
Yeah, for his position.
We're not talking he's a great facilitator.
No.
Like, for his position.
He's also really... I think his basketball IQ is really high. I'd give him that.
Okay. But what I'm getting at though, like, so yeah, I think his biggest strength is like the versatility he provides on the offensive side of the ball, and that also goes into the ability to create for others. But it's just that it's versatility. Like he's not a knockdown 3-point shooter.
No, he shot. 30,
he's actually not even particularly.
Shot just under 34% from outside last year. Which
he's not even
solid.
particularly that great of a jump shooter in general. It's very inconsistent is probably what I should say. He has games where he's knocked down. He has games where he
shot 52.5% from inside the arc last year, 33.8% from outside on 3.3 attempts. So he's making right around 1 a game. To combine for a 47.8% field goal percentage, which is good. Like, he does all of those things well. None of it's great, though. He's a really good basketball player. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I love him offensively. My big hang-up with him is
defense.
He's a straight-up liability on defense.
Now, I will say, if you bring in a big man that can kind of clog up the paint, play really solid post defense, you have Saddiq Bey, you have Cade, you can probably hide some of that defensive deficiency with Banchero. I do think he's probably the most likely to fall to the Pistons at 5, so there's a very real chance that he's there. But I do think you can hide some of his defensive deficiencies there because you have some guys who play some good defense around him.
Speaking of, Kevin O'Connor of the Ringer, he in his draft his prospect analysis of Banchero, he says that he's an effective help defender who can alter shots around the rim using his length and athleticism. ... when he's trying.
He's also he's a guy who's not going to get pushed around in the paint defensively.
Yeah, he's got good size.
He's 250 pounds. He's a big boy.
Yeah.
If he puts in the effort defensively, and I do think, honestly, playing alongside the likes of Cade Cunningham and Saddiq Bey, I do think they're going to bring some of that effort out of them. Those are guys that make you want to play harder.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to see a little bit of that. And even if, honestly, like I said, even if we don't get it, and he's still kind of a minus defender, you can mask that a little bit on this team. You can, because you have Saddiq Bey, you have Cade Cunningham. You're probably looking to bring in a rim protector. You can mask some of that.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite comps for Banchero is Chris Webber.
I was just about to say one of my favorite comps is Chris Webber. Yes, Chris Webber's a great comparison for him. I also see a little bit of Julius Randle, Juwan Howard. Those are a couple of comps that I've seen. Some of the other ones that are thrown out there, a little Blake Griffin. I don't know that I see that as much because Blake Griffin had freak athleticism to begin his career. I'll say this. The one good year Blake had with the Pistons, I can see that comparison.
Yep, Pistons Blake Griffin.
It's the one good year only, though.
I've seen Carmelo thrown around, which I don't agree with.
I don't see that because I don't think he's that good of a scorer.
In general, and he's a better facilitator than Melo. I think people are. I think whoever throws around that comparison is just latching on to the defensive side of the ball for that one.
Definitely agree.
Not to mention, doesn't he have a good 3 inches on Melo?
I think Melo's 6'8", 6'7". So yeah, he's got 3 inches on Melo, and I'm not sure on his weight, but I'm sure Melo's put on some of the pounds in later. 240
depends
pounds.
which Melo you're comparing to.
Yeah, but I like Paolo Banchero a lot. Don't get me wrong. And frankly, what he can become in the league, I'd love to see Chris Webber on a team like this. You mean tell if Paolo Banchero turns into what Chris Webber was and he plays on this team, that's awesome. That'd be great. I do want to see the effort come out on the defensive side of the ball, and I'd like to see him take the skills that he possesses. I want to see him develop one great skill. You know, that's what kind of sets apart the good players from the great players in this league is they have a great skill, but they do everything else well. Or something else, a bunch of other things well.
Like your Jabari Smith. His great skills is shooting.
Yes.
And he does other things very well.
Right. And I would love to see Paolo Banchero develop one of his skills to be great because that's the difference between a Tobias Harris and a Jabari Smith. We'll go with that again. That's the difference there. Tobias Harris is a good player on a good team too. But I'd want a little bit more.
Final question. He's there at 5. What are you doing?
This one's a little bit tougher. I'm not going to lie to you. This is one where I'd honestly be like 50-50, 55-45.
I can go first if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if this is me being too scared about the negative defense and the impact that it will have on a team that I feel like their identity is starting to form the defense first. But
I disagree with that a little bit. I think they tried, and after they realized Isaiah Stewart's not great defensively inside, I think that's changing.
That's why I think eventually we're going to try to move Stewart to 4. But because he is a good perimeter defender, like he can step out there.
Interior speaking, he's not.
Yeah, he lacks the size. And he doesn't have the bounce that Ben had to make up for it.
Right.
I think he's the only guy in the top 3 that I'm taking Jaden Ivey over.
You know, it's really tough because I like the idea of what Paolo Banchero can become. I really like the player. I don't really see an elite potential out of Banchero. Like I don't see it there. I can see elite tier out of Jaden Ivey and what he does just based on what they do on the floor. I think Banchero can become a really good basketball player in this league. I don't see him taking that step into the elite tier versus Jaden Ivey. I can see that. So for that reason, I'll probably just lean Jaden Ivey. Like it's real close for me, but I'd probably just lean Ivey. And
I can pose the same question you did. Like what, just in terms of impact on the floor, like how much more impact is Banchero going to have than what Jeremy Grant has had with this team?
Right.
Yes, he'll move the ball a little bit better.
And see, that's where I'd say, like, if you had to ask me right now, Banchero or Jeremy Grant, I'd say Banchero 100% of the time because of the fact that, like, my biggest issue with Jeremy Grant is the fact that he's unwilling, I don't want to say incapable, but unwilling to move the basketball and create a fluid offense. This team plays
to pay him a crap ton of money.
Yes, but this team does even salaries. I'd still take Banchero because of that reason. Like, if you mean to tell me we get a guy that puts up similar numbers, but also isn't a total ball stopper, that's awesome. Like this team works best that way.
Yeah.
So I think Banchero would be a plus basketball player and a really plus basketball player on this team versus Grant was either a 0 or a minus player at times. I would definitely lean Banchero there. But again, Jaden Ivey, like the potential to have an elite backcourt there is just too great for me to pass up.
So. Yeah, I think I agree with you on that front.
So
you're basically telling me if like Chet Holmgren and Jabari Smith went 1-2, and then you were offered number 3 for Jeremy Grant, would you not take it? I'd absolutely take it.
Yeah, God, yes.
Yeah,
like you want Jeremy Grant and I get Banchero? Hell yeah.
But yeah, that's the last.
That's the end of our preview. Yeah, that's the end of our prospect profile. That was fun. We can do that more. I like doing that. I like breaking down some of the guys who could potentially become household names in this town. But that is going to close it out for this week, guys. I think next week we're going to be doing our pre-draft talk because we could do it one of two ways. We could do our pre-draft talk next week
and then give you guys
a whole week, or we could do our pre-draft talk the following week and have our pre-draft episode drop
morning of
draft morning.
Yep.
So I probably lean let's do our pre-draft next week and then just go full excitement day the following, maybe. I don't know.
2 pre-draft talk shows.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. But anyways, guys, thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at RealFanReport. Andrew, thank you for joining me. Thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast, as always. We will catch you guys next week. This has been the Fan Reporters. Bye, fans.
For fans.
Have a good one, guys. Peace out. Enjoy your week.
Peace.